580.
Raja Yogic concentration is here. Yes, yes. Okay. I'm there.
You got it? Would you like to read today, Sarojani?
Yes.
Okay. It will be the first time you will be
You have
reading.
to redo the para.
No, we have to read it.
Yeah, I'm going
Raj
to
Yogi.
Raja Yogic concentration
Yeah.
is divided into 4 stages. It commences with the drawing both of the mind and senses from outward things, proceeds to the holding of the one object of concentration to the exclusion of all other ideas and mental activities, then to the prolonged absorption of the mind in this object. Finally, to the complete ingoing of the consciousness by which it is lost to all outward mental activity in the oneness of samadhi. The real object of this mental discipline is to draw away the mind from the outward and mental world into union with the divine being. Therefore, in the first 3 stages, use has to be made of some mental means or support by which the mind accustomed to run about from object to object shall fix on one alone, and that one must be something which represents the idea of the divine. It is usually a name or a form or a mantra by which the thought can be fixed in the soul knowledge or adoration of the Lord. By this concentration on the idea, the mind enters from idea into its reality, into which it sinks silent, absorbed, unified. This is a traditional method. There are, however, others which are equally of a Rajayogic character, since they use the mental and physical being as key. Some of them are directed rather to the quiescence of the mind than to its immediate absorption as a discipline by which the mind is simply watched and allowed to exhaust its habit of vagrant thought in a purposeless running from which it feels all sanction, purpose, and interest withdrawn, and that more tenuous and rapidly effective, by which all outward going thought is excluded, and the mind forced to sink into itself, where its absolute quietude, it can only reflect the pure being or pass away into its superconscient existence. The method differs the object, and the result are the same.
This he is going into the last 4 stages of the Raja. If you remember, the 8 stages are there, very, very systematic and very, very scientific. The 8 stages are, we have already seen. First is Yama, then there is Niyama, then there is Asanas, then there is Pranayama. These are the first 4. Then the next are all, what Sylvia is saying, they are in the mind. Okay, so this one. Just one second. Yeah, I've got it. Raj, so the last 4 are Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Pratyahara 5th, Dharana 6th, Dhyana is the 7th, and the 8th is Samadhi. So we'll explain all these 4, what Srindra is saying. We'll go according to Srindra's explanation. Rajogic concentration is divided into 4 stages. The concentration is of the mind. Okay, so the first is the pratyahara. Pratyahara. It is the pulling in of the senses. Okay, normally our senses go wild, and whatever we see attractive, it wants to go out and seize it. Okay, it can seize physically, it can seize also psychologically and mentally. Subtly also it can seize. If you want it, desire goes out. So these 4 are the stages. So the first 4 is pratyahara. The first of the last 4. Okay, pratyahara. Pratyahara. You don't feed your senses. You pull them in. The senses are often compared to horses. Okay, your body is a chariot, and they are being driven by 4 horses. And the lagams, the what are called the reins, are the mind. You have to control them with the mind. At least in the beginning, you have to control them with the mind. Not very effective, but that's the only way you have. Afterwards, it's a different thing. Okay, there's a higher power that controls. So you can. This is the first one. Second one is dharana. Dharana is the capacity to hold a thought. Okay, because normally when we are trying to concentrate, we see that the mind easily goes off. Okay, from one thing it will go on to another, one thing it will go on to another. So dharana is the capacity of holding the mind still, not still absolutely, but holding to the thought that you are trying to understand. Then there is dhyana. Dhyana is the holding of the thought on a particular line. Okay, you are thinking. There is movement in the mind, but the movement is along only one line. Suppose you are thinking of divine love. Then it is not going to stray off and go into knowledge or go into something else or go into what is there for lunch in dining hall today. It won't go off like that. It will continuously on that one line only what you're thinking, it will go along that line. That is dhyana, meditation. Meditation is movement in the mind, but it is along one line only, homogeneous, okay, and directed, pointedly directed, concentrated thinking. The last is samadhi, where there is no thought at all. It is still, it becomes absolutely silent. And that silent also is of two types. Okay, that also we will discuss. One is, I have a thought in my mind. Okay? I am seeing a picture of mother and trying to concentrate on that. So my mind is focused on mother's picture. But that picture is static. Okay, and my mind is not moving anywhere else. Then there is another one in which there is no object to be thought about. Absolute blank mind. So, samprajjata samadhi and asamprajjata samadhi. These are the two. So we have just reviewed. Now we'll look at the text, what's in this. It commences with the drawing both of the mind and senses from outward things. This is what they call pratyahara. Proceeds to the holding of one object of concentration to the exclusion of all other ideas and mental activities. This is the dharana. Then to the prolonged absorption of the mind in this object, that is dhyana. Finally, to the complete ingoing of the consciousness by which it is lost to all. No outward mental activity at all. Okay? Is lost to all outward mental activity in the oneness of samadhi. So he has defined with one phrase each of these four stages. To look again at the text, what he's saying. Okay. First is a commences with drawing both of the mind and senses, not only mind, but even the senses have to be pulled in. Okay. But it's done very effectively by closing your eyes and also, if possible, stay in a place where you don't hear sounds also. Because a sharp sound from somewhere will make your mind jump. What is that sound? So that also is preferable not to. But a yogi has a capacity to keep his eyes open and his ears open, but still he will not be affected by the sights and the sounds. But that's difficult, it's not easy. So that's one thing. Then outward. Next is proceeds to the holding of the one object of concentration. This is the dharana. To the exclusion of all other ideas and mental activities. Then to the prolonged absorption of the mind in its object. Whatever is the object, as I said, I have a picture of mother and I'm concentrating on that. That's my object. Okay? And I'm concentrating on that. So the mind does not move. It is fixed on that photograph of mother. It can be anything, by the way. It can be even a dot. It can be an abstract idea of love. It can be an idea of knowledge, whatever it is. It is fixed on that. Then finally, you have the complete ingoing of the consciousness by which it is lost to all outward mental activity. Completely, no outward mental activity at all, complete samadhi. And that samadhi also is of real two types, as you said. So this is the four stages. The real object of this mental discipline is to draw away the mind from the outward and the mental world into union with the divine being. Once the mind is silent, then the higher planes of consciousness can come in. Okay? So, note also the mind from the outward, that means the physical world, and the mental world also, even the inner. So, inner and outer, both are vanished in the samadhi. Therefore, in the first three stages, use has to be made of some mental means or support by which the mind, accustomed to run about from object to object, shall fix on one alone. Okay? So, the example we gave, one alone is a photograph of mother or photograph of Sri. It can be anything. The, the quality of the mind silence doesn't depend so much upon the object. It can be, as I said, a dot. It can be an om. These are the usual traditional things which are done. The tantrics use a dot. Just a dot. Bindu. On a white sheet, you put one dot. That's called tratak. Okay? There are different types of concentration on different subjects. So, but when you are concentrating on mother's picture, one thing happens. The mind becomes silent, but also the power of what you are seeing enters into you. So certainly it is preferable to use a photograph of Mother of Sri Aurobindo, and those who are not familiar with Mother of Sri Aurobindo, they use whatever. Say Om, okay, or dot, or they may be concentrating on anything else, Shiva, or Vishnu, or Brahma, whatever. So that power also can enter into you. So therefore, the real object of this mental discipline is to draw away the mind from the outward and the mental. The mental is inner and the outward world is the physical world, into union with the divine being. Therefore, in the first three stages, use has to be made of some mental means of support by which the mind, accustomed to run about from object to object, shall fix on one alone, and that one must be something which represents the idea of the divine. So just now we said Om, that also is divine. Even the dot, because you see, the infinite is contained in the finite. So even that is used. But as Srimad is saying, if you get something which is associated with the divine, it is 10 times better. So we do that. It is usually a name, okay, Navajapa, what they do, okay, or a form or a mantra. The form is what I said about photograph or even a statue or whatever. Or a mantra, even the mantra, the sound. And that mantra can also be the Om, okay, that also is possible. By which the thought can be fixed in the soul knowledge or adoration of the Lord. So it can be knowledge, but it can also be love and adoration, depending on the individual who is doing it. So if you are, for instance, concentrating on mother's picture, adoration also is likely to come in, more than likely. So, by this concentration on the idea, just 1 second, I go to page 541. Yeah. The mind enters from the idea into its reality. There you are. Okay, so this is the purpose. So suppose I am concentrating on mother's photograph. This principle applies to everything. But suppose I am concentrating, I will be able to contact the mother in this way. The mind enters from the idea into its reality. So reality is the mother's presence. So I will be able to do that. Okay. Into which it sinks, silent, absorbed, unified. You unify yourself with the consciousness of the mother. This is the traditional method. There are, however, others which are equally of a Raja Yogic character, since they use the mental and psychical being as key. Okay? Not physical, psychical being as key. That is, psychical means psychological. That's what it means. It's not nothing to do with the psychic, as you understand it. Use the mental and psychological being as key. Some of them are directed rather to the quiescence of the mind than to its immediate absorption. Some of them use the Shiva has got many grades. There is what is called a quiet mind, there is a calm mind, okay? There is a silent mind. So these are all grades. So Shiva is now talking about the grades. Some of them are directed rather to the quiescence of the mind, calmness. Okay? They're not interested very much in the absorption. Absorption means absolutely zero thought. No, it's only calming the mind down. You will see very often that our mind is, when it is disturbed, it goes on jumping about like a monkey. It goes about from this to that, this very asthira. Okay, it becomes very fickle and jumping about all the time. So the first discipline is to make it quiet. That's the aim, calm mind, and then a quiet mind, and then a silent mind. There are grades. Some of them are directed rather to the quiescence of the mind than to its immediate absorption. Immediate absorption is the samadhi. As a discipline by which the mind is simply watched and allowed to exhaust its habit of vagrant thought. A vagrant is a one who is roaming about. Okay? What is the word? Vagrant. One who is a vagabond. Okay? A vagabond is a vagrant. It's going out here and there without any purpose. So the mind, when it is concentrated inwards, it is simply watching the thought. The thoughts go on in the brain and you are just watching it. Your consciousness has detached itself from the mind. Normally we think that our consciousness is mind. It is not. The mind can be withdrawn very easily, the consciousness from the body. It can be withdrawn also from the vital. And the most difficult is to withdraw it from the mind. You go on watching your thoughts, and when you watch your thoughts normally, it is after the thought has occurred. But if you can go on persisting with that discipline, you will be able to watch the thought while it is occurring. That is the silent mind. Your consciousness has become absolutely watching the thought, and since the mind is not getting any permission to think, slowly it will die out. Okay? Just like we gave the example of the scooter. Huh? When a scooter is going, before you reach your destination, you want to save petrol. 50 meters before you come to the place where you want to go, your goal, you switch off the engine. So now no more power is being given to the scooter, but the past energy that has been given to it continues, okay, until finally it comes to a stop. That's exactly what Sridhar is saying. Once you don't allow your mind to function, you are not giving it any new energy, slowly, it will cease to have thoughts. It will become silent. Look at the sentence again, please. By which the mind is simply watched. Watched by whom? Watched by the watcher, the witness, the consciousness which is only watching, not the mind, and allowed to exhaust its habit of vagrant thought. The exhausting of the vagrant thought is exactly similar to the scooter being switched off. No more permission is given, no more new energy is given. In a habit of vagrant thought, in a purposeless running from which it feels all sanction, purpose and interest withdrawn. Sanction also is withdrawn. The mind feels that I am not being given any new energy, and there's no purpose also. Because normally the mind has got purpose, aim, interest. Okay? But when the mind is silent and not giving any, the mind has nothing to focus on. It slowly becomes silent. And that more strenuous and rapidly effective, by which all outward going thought is excluded and the mind forced to sink into itself, where in its absolute quietude, it can only reflect the pure being or pass away into its superconscious existence. The method differs. The object and the result are the same. Now, this is very interesting what Sundar is saying, by which all outward going thought is excluded and the mind forced to sink into itself, where in its absolute quietude, it can only reflect the pure being. In the Gita, this is used with different words and we'll link the two. It's very interesting. Whenever you want to do something, even a desire, it reflects in the mind and says, okay, I want this. I need a new dress. My pen is spoiled, I need a new pen. I feel like eating this, I feel like eating that. It comes with a mental thought. So the Gita says, Sarvarambha Parityagi. So the mind now has no thought and not initiating any thought, nor giving any sanction to the desire. So when that permission is withdrawn and the mind falls silent, the beginning of all control of desire is to cut the link with the mind. So it begins, all action in the physical world begins with a mental thought. So if you cut the thought, slowly the action in the physical world will die out. So that's it. You have to do that. You have to, initiation of all action in the mind has to stop. Okay? That's the interesting part. And then when it becomes absolutely silent, the truth is reflected in it. Just like the landscape and the sky is reflected in still waters. When the water is turbulent, okay, and moving, the reflections of the sky you don't see at all. But if the water is absolutely still, the sky will be reflected, all the clouds will be reflected clearly. It will be like a mirror. So that is in the spiritual plane of consciousness, that is the first. You don't see truth in the spiritual planes of consciousness. You only see a reflection of the truth. The silent mind reflects the truth. It does not seize the truth. Okay? The seizing of the truth comes higher up. You have to go to the element mind, intuitive mind, over mind, and then you can seize to a certain extent. The complete seizing can come only from the super. Okay? So that's the 4 stages. Now we can read the next one. Here it might be supposed. So who will read now?
Would you like it?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yours, it might be supposed the whole action and aim of Raj Yoga must end. For its action is the sitting of the waves of consciousness, its manifold activities, chitta vritti, first through a habitual replacing of the turbid rajasic activities by the quiet and luminous sattvic, then by the stilling of all activities, and its object is to enter into silent communication of soul and unity with the divine. As a matter of fact, we find that the system of Raj Yoga includes other objects, such as the practice and use of occult powers, some of which seem to be unconnected with and even inconsistent with its main purpose. These powers or siddhis are indeed frequently condemned as dangers and distractions which may draw away the yogin from his sole legitimate aim of divine union. On the way, therefore, it would naturally seem as if they ought to be avoided, and once the goal is reached, it would seem that they are then frivolous and superfluous. But Raj Yoga is a psychic science and it includes the attainment of all the higher states of consciousness and their powers by which the mental being rises towards the superconscious as well as its ultimate and supreme possibility of union with the highest. Moreover, the yogin, while in the body, is not always mentally inactive and sunk in samadhi, and an account of the powers and states which are possible to him on the higher planes of his being is necessary to the completeness of the science?
Note about science. Raj Yoga is a very, very scientific method. Very scientific. Step by step.
Can one understand that
Ah.
since in Raj Yoga, asanas and pranayama is included, that means Hatha Yoga is a part of Raja Yoga?
Hatha Yoga is a part of Raj Yoga, yes. Yes. But the Hatha Yoga concentrates mainly on the body. They don't go to the psychological aspects. They concentrate on the mind, body itself. And the body gets tremendous powers, and you can even levitate, and you can have long life. All these things are possible in Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is part of Raj Yoga, yes, but it goes much beyond. Hatha Yoga has got, for instance, maybe number of asanas at 80, okay? But in Raj Yoga, they are reduced to a very minimum, maybe 5 or 6, depending on the individual. Okay? Whereas the attention in Raj Yoga is more psychological. As you said just now, the last 4 are not there so much in the Hatha Yoga. It's mainly the physical aspect that is stressed. So let's read and finish this. I think it's the last paragraph of the chapter. I think, I'm not sure, we'll see. Here, it might be supposed, okay, it can be said that the whole action and aim of Raj Yoga must end, for its action is a stilling of the waves of consciousness. The consciousness, again, there is an image there. Your mental stuff is like a sea, and when it's in movement, it is making waves, and therefore there is confusion in the mind. But if the sea becomes absolutely silent, then it reflects the truth. It's actually like there is a stirring of the waves of consciousness. Its manifold activities. Chitta vritti. Chitta is the stuff of consciousness. It is substance of consciousness. Vritti is movement. So you don't allow that movement, okay, in the stuff of your mind. The stuff of your mind is a substance. Mental substance is there. That does not move like in the ocean. It becomes absolutely still. First, through a habitual replacing of the turbid rajasic activities by the quiet and luminous sattvic. So, in the nature, you have the tamasic, the rajasic, and the sattvic. So, the tamasic and the rajasic have to be replaced first by the sattvic. That it belongs to the mind. Okay? Not let the vital go absolutely crazy. But that's the use of the pratyahara, the 5th element of the Raj Yoga. Pratyahara, control of the senses, will ultimately give you a sattvic nature. Then, by the stilling of all activities, the pratyahara jnana samadhi. And its object is to enter into silent communion of soul and unity with the divine. Silent communion of soul and unity with the divine. As a matter of fact, we find that the system of Raj Yoga includes other objects. It's not only this, but there are other objects. And what is that? Such as the practice and use of occult powers. These occult powers are also called Ashtasiddhis. And they are usually beginning from physical powers, slowly come to vital powers, and finally mental powers also, and finally spiritual powers. So what are the physical powers, or rather the subtle physical powers? Anima, Laghima, Garima. Okay? Anima is, you can make your consciousness as small as possible. Then Garima, it can become as the body also. Okay? The body can become so light, then it can levitate. Then there is Garima. Garima is, it becomes so heavy that no one can lift you up even. That also is possible. Laghima is lightness. You don't feel fatigue, you know. Same way we used to practice that in Pondicherry. We used to practice Laghima. And in jail, once we had the experience of also the levitation. His whole body was hanging, just a part of his body was touching the wall. And the Scottish guard who was there, when he saw that, he actually went crazy. He went running away. How can someone float? He got frightened. Okay. But Sri Aurobindo says that was not 100% levitation. Some part of his body was touching the wall and the ground. Some part. Most of it was high up. Okay, so as a matter of fact, we find the system of Rajayoga included. So, Anima, Garima, Lagima, and then you have the other powers. Okay? Prakamyam, Aishwaryam, okay, all these things are there. Prakamyam, you can get whatever you can see the future, Trikala Drishti, you can also see the past of anybody, you can also have subtle sight, subtle clairvoyance, all these things are possible. And finally you have the Aishwaryam. Aishwaryam means you are master. You are master not only of yourself, which is Swarat, but you can also be master of the universe. Samrat. You can impose your will on others. That also is possible. Okay? So these are the powers that are there, and they are usually discouraged, because if you have powers, just like a little boy who has a little toy has been given to him, he wants to use that toy and see what it is. So when the powers come to you, you also want to use them. Then what will happen? Ego will come in. That is the reason why they are advised, yogis are advised not to look at these powers at all and consider them as valueless objects lying on the way, roadside. That is what they say. But in Sri Aurobindo's case, it is different. He says, if I want to act in the physical world, I need power. But the powers and all that are very dangerous if your ego is still there. So one of the first things you must do is to get rid of ego. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, that's why ego, attachment, and desire are the first things that you have to eliminate. Then it is safe. Otherwise, it's not safe at all. So these powers or siddhis are indeed frequently condemned as dangers and distractions, which draw away the yogin from his sole legitimate aim of divine union. The only way is to reach the divine and unite himself with him. On the way, therefore, it would naturally seem as if they ought to be avoided. And once the goal is reached, it would seem that they are then frivolous and superfluous. When you are in the divine consciousness, he is doing everything for you. You don't need any powers. You don't need anything. The divine is doing everything for you because you have united yourself with the divine. But Rajoga is a psychic science. Psychic, again, he is not talking of the psychic in his terminology. He is talking of psychological science, and it includes the attainment of all the higher states of consciousness, all the higher states, higher mind, element mind, intuitive mind, over mind, okay? And their powers by which the mental being rises towards the superconscious. The superconscious is a very vague term which implies everything about the mind, okay? The normal mind. Includes the attainment of all the higher states of consciousness and their powers by which the mental being rises towards the superconscious, as well as its ultimate and supreme possibility of union with the highest. And again, the highest is different for different people. Moreover, the yogin, while in the body, is not always mentally inactive and sunk in samadhi, because he'll be in the physical world. And maybe even people will come to him as a guru, therefore, for learning things. So, sunk in samadhi. And an account of the powers and states which are possible to him on the higher planes of his being is necessary for the completeness of the science. In Raj Yoga, the powers are not avoided, but they are usually dangerous because you can make you come down to a lower level of consciousness. 540. So these powers, no, the chapter is not finished. There's a lot to go see. But we have come to the end of our time, 8:39. So we'll stop here today. And next time we'll take up these powers and experiences belong. Okay. He's going to describe the powers. So that we'll see what they are. Next time I can also give you all the list of the powers. Okay.
Merci
So-
beaucoup.
Okay.
Au revoir, Rangana.
Thank you, Ranga. Thank you, Ranga.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you.